I guess the room's pretty much full, so we might as well start. I think it's about that time. So, welcome and thanks for coming. My name is Daniel Ficker, and I'm going to be talking about launching your site. And first of all, what we're going to cover here, or what I'm going to cover, basically just I've had worked at an agency for years building websites, and just there's a lot of small details that have to deal with actually getting the website launched. That is not really all about developing and building websites. That's something that you can do in many, many different ways. But I'm going to talk about kind of some more of the. This is kind of a basic overview, but basically talking about how DNS works and how to get the DNS changed to get your website launched. Talk a little bit about hosting, and SSL certificates is something that you need more and more these days for a website. And then add the actual process of moving it and doing a lot of preparing to make sure that the move goes as smoothly as possible. So if you're hoping for something about, I'm a big fan of Twin Cities. Drupal is our Twin Cities Drupal user group. So Drupal is a content management system that you can build websites with, and I'm not really going to talk about that. And lots of other people like to build websites with WordPress and other things, but that's not what we're going to talk about too much either. So many ways to build a website, and we're not going to go there. But I guess briefly about me, my Twitter name, Delirious Guy. I don't know why that is, but and there's my blog, and I work at a company here in town called August Ash, and we do design and development, WordPress, Drupal, Magento e-commerce, design, development, internet marketing. And so if you want to check us out, go to augustash.com. And I last minute found a photo of myself up in Door County or something like that. I don't know. I couldn't get a good photo until the last minute. But what we're going to do, one thing I'll do throughout this presentation is kind of put together a list to get you ready of what information you need to actually move your website from one service to another. When you're launching a new website, what actually do you need? And so this is finding basically a number of different people that are involved, or companies or stakeholders that have some of this information about, like, hey, this is where the website used to be hosted, and that type, and then we can get that information from them and make sure that we have all the communication ready to actually launch the website. So the few things there are the registrar, the owner of the domain, the DNS servers, the people who manage those DNS servers, and the new hosting provider. So first of all, we're going to talk about what DNS is. The very basics is DNS stands for, I think, Domain Name Service, or something like that. I guess I should have looked that up. I didn't, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So what that really means is when you go to google.com, or today you at least a couple times have gone to sessions.ministar.org to look up where the sessions are, that actually goes to a computer somewhere, and computers are determined by IP addresses, which is just a numerical value that says this is the place to go to this server. And
it's domain name system.
Domain name system. Okay, thank you. I will change that when I get done with this. So yeah, first we're going to talk about the various parts of the internet. First of all, you all know about your computer, or your phone, or any sort of other internet-connected device. And then that connects to some sort of a router. It could be a wireless or wired router. There's plenty of routers all through this building. And then from there, the routers also connect to an actual connection to the internet. And this kind of keeps going on for a long time, where you have lots of different servers that are talking to each other to say, when you say, hey, I want to go to google.com, it goes to a bunch of different computers and finds actually where that google.com server is and the information you're looking for. In the domain name system, the kind of canonical place where domain name information is held is called the name server. So for ministar.org, we'll look at it here in a second, but they actually have a server that says this is where our DNS requests come from. So we're going to kind of, with these same computers, talk about the request path. So first, someone, your computer says, where is ministar.org? And it first asks the router, and the router probably doesn't know, so it asks, a couple different internet systems, or it keeps asking the next person down the line. It says, I don't know, let's go ask somebody else. And it just continues to ask until, if nobody knows, it actually gets all the way back to this name server. And the name server will actually return a result. We'll look at the result in a second. But then when it returns a result, all these other DNS servers along the way can actually keep a copy of that result. So then in the end, it all gets back to you, but the copies also stay in different places throughout the internet. And I looked it up, and when I went to ministar.org like an hour ago, you got this IP address, 209.240.94.7, and so that's a server where ministar.org is currently being available from. And when it sends back that DNS information, it also says it's valid for this many more seconds. And so the name server sends that out and says basically, basically that this stuff is guaranteed to be valid for this many more seconds. If it's hundreds of seconds, thousands of seconds, and then any server that wants to keep a copy of that information can keep it for that long. And the nice thing that comes of this is really that the next time you go to ministar.org, or anybody else in this building probably goes to ministar.org, it's going to take a lot less time to look up where is ministar.org, and therefore your website loads a little bit faster because it doesn't have to go find where is this name server. It already, a router closer to you also already says, hey, I know where that is, and just gives you the information back. So I think that makes sense. That's the first part about it. Any questions about that, I guess? All right, so we're going to keep going here. I don't see any questions. We're talking about stakeholders. And I said 3, 2, 1 launching a website, so I decided we could go with some kind of rocket ship launching graphics, just because it seemed like a fun theme. One place where we get some of this information about how the DNS is getting to the current website and how we want to move it to our new website is with this who is record. If you look on a website, or sometimes you can even type it into the command line, just say who is ministar.org, and it will give you back this text. It goes a little longer than that whole screen, but we're not going to try to read it off of there because it's way too small. There are some important parts, though, that I'll highlight here. First of all, I see there's first there's a registrar URL, which says this. Let's see. There's a number of companies that can basically lease the domain name. So you have to buy from one of these companies that says, yes, I want to buy. So somebody who works for ministar.org says, I want to buy ministar.org, and they bought it from a company called Enom, or at least one of the contractors that works underneath enom.com. So they bought it from them, and they have said, this person at ministar.org basically owns it through September, and if they pay their renewal bill, then they will keep continuing to own it. And at least they've owned it for a couple years, 7 or 8 years at least, maybe longer. Then, actually right here in the Who is record, we also got a couple more things, including a name of someone, and the organization is Ministar as well. And there's actually the full, a full address and an email address of an administrative contact, someone who we could get a hold of, assumingly, to inquire about this domain and how it works. And then the last thing is those name servers we talked about, which are actually, a DNS server, two DNS servers in this case, that include all the actual DNS records. And so if no one else on the internet, or if none of the routers know where to go, it goes and asks these two name servers, what is the DNS record? What's that IP address for ministar.org? And I think we kind of went over those earlier. So the registrar is the company where you lease the domain name from, I'd say. The registrant and admin, actually I should say that there's a registration name and address and a phone number. There's also an administrative name address and sometimes a tech address or something like that, which could be a couple different contacts, but the main one is the registrar, or the registrant. Yes, registrant is the one who actually owns the domain name. And so the registrant and admin are persons or organizations that actually do lease this domain and should know something about the management. Sometimes you email that person and they either don't respond or they're like, I don't know how to change it. And so then you might have to do a little bit more digging to find out who actually controls the DNS records that are on those name servers. But on our list of information that we need, we do have a couple things now filled out. It says the registrar is Enum, and the owner is Ministar, the organization that also runs the website. And then also we have our name servers. And we still need to figure out a couple more things before if we were going to launch a new ministar.org website, we'd still need to figure out who we actually have to contact to change those DNS records. I looked up a little bit. The registrarservers.com domain name is, I think, owned by something called namecheap.com. And you can look up, do another whois lookup on registrarservers.com, and that is owned by namecheap.com. So hopefully, again, if you email administrar.org or talk to, I think the name was Jamie on there, then they can tell you, or either they know how to change the DNS or they know who to talk to, an IT company or someone who can change the DNS records. And that's what you really need to know is like, can I change it? And do I have a login to change it? Or can I talk to or email the person who is going to change it, change those DNS records? And then the last thing we'll need in a minute here, we'll talk about where we're going to host our website. And once we get that information, what DNS records do we have to put into the hosting provider, or get from the hosting provider and put into the DNS servers. So so that, like I said, we just have to find out who actually runs those DNS servers and how we can get the records changed. And there's maybe another wrinkle there actually too. If our company as a website developer does offer to say, hey, we can host the DNS for you if you want, so then you just have us to come to update your website, change your DNS, and a number of other things. Or you can still have your old IT company or the old website company do it, but it may be another person you have to contact when you do want to change how your email works, because usually how your email works is related to DNS as well, or add another subdomain or something like that to your DNS. And then basically if we can get that login or contact information of the person who does change that information, then we are pretty much ready to go. Except for a couple more things. Hosting. Hosting is a big part. Hosting is a big part of getting your website up and running. There's a number of different options for hosting. It really depends somewhat on what your website or web application is, and what it's built on, and how it will be working. Most of the stuff that we work on is Linux-based PHP systems, so you're looking for a Linux hosting company that can run PHP and MySQL and things like that. But if you're working on a .NET application, you probably need a Microsoft IIS server or something similar. And so you'll probably have to work with the people who built the website and or a hosting company provider that you want to use to figure out exactly what kind of resources do we need, and how much are they going to cost. I'll talk a little bit about costing of hosting. Hosting can go from anywhere from $200 or $2 a month or something like that to hundreds and thousands of dollars per month, depending on what you need. If you're just hosting a very small, personal website like my blog, which gets, a couple visitors every month or something, I don't know. But then maybe this $2 hosting will work great for you, but it also could, at some point, if suddenly hundreds of thousands of people want to visit my blog, then the blog might stop working. The server might just overload and say, I can't really handle all these requests. And so then you have an unworking website. And for my blog, that doesn't really matter maybe too much, because it's like, well, they can come back later and probably see the information. But if it's like your company or a client's company and they really want to make that information available, then we should probably looking at something a little bit more robust. And so I'd say more money can and cannot doesn't always necessarily mean you're getting better service, but usually. More money usually will get you a better quality server. It'll probably get you better support. I know with a lot of these really cheap hosting companies, sometimes the website will just stop working and you ask them why and they're like, oh, we had a problem. And you're like, so what was the problem and what are you going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? And sometimes they won't even answer you. But if you pay $20, $50, $100 a month or something like that, then more often there's a support team that knows all the details of what happened and why, and and even proactively email you and say, hey, we know your server was down. We're sorry about that. Here's what happened, and here's how we're going to try to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. So that's maybe why you spend a lot more money. And then, like one server, again, only really helps with a certain amount of traffic. If you're suddenly on, back in the day you used to say Oprah's TV show, or you're on the local news where they mention your website, you're going to immediately get, thousands of requests within a couple minutes, and your server may or may not handle that. There are hosting systems that will automatically see, oh, we're getting lots of traffic, so let's just build up a couple extra servers and actually run those side by side with each other to actually handle all this traffic. But that doesn't usually come with the $2 a month hosting. So that's some stuff to keep in mind with hosting. Back here to our stakeholder list, I looked, and the contact information for the Who Has record says Jamie from Ministar. So I'm going to just assume, I haven't actually talked to him, but I'm just going to assume that if we were going to launch a new website there, I would just email him and he would say either here's the login for DNS or here's the person you contact. And then we now know that, well, actually I looked as well, and the Ministar current website is hosted on IP House. At least the IP address is owned by IP House. So I assume that means, and they've been a sponsor here before, so I assume a good local company. So I assume that they probably are hosting it. So now, well, let's see. Yeah, now we basically have all the information that we need about where current DNS is and kind of where we're going to be, where we're going to be putting or changing the DNS records to go to. A little bit about that. Depending on your various hosting environments, if you're hosting on a private server, which is just a server that's all your own, most likely you'll get an IP address, something like 123.4, whatever, and you'll get an IP address, and basically anybody that hits that IP address will get your website or a website on your server. That can be nice if you want to host a bunch of different websites, or if you just, again, have kind of a small website. But what you might want to do, like I said, if you have a bunch of servers, there might be some more fancy DNS systems you can do. Newer systems like cloud servers that do kind of this, launching more copies of the server if needed, will usually give you some sort of a CNAME record or something like that, which means that they can actually put 4 or 5 different IP addresses behind that DNS record. And those systems also usually, and also some shared hosting, would expect you to, this is in their administrator interface on a service called Pantheon that I've used, if you want to say, hey, maybe minibar.org should also be available to this server, then you'd actually have to add that in there so that their network knows I should respond to requests from minibar.org as well and direct them to this website. But then they will usually, the hosting company will usually say, hey, this is what DNS records you should put in there, this IP address or this type of DNS record to get the website working well. And let's see. Oh, yes, I'm going to talk about SSL. SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer, I believe. And what that is about is making sure that the information going from your server to the person's browser is secure. So actually, if you do look at ministar.org, their information is not transmitted over SSL, I don't believe, which in some cases is not really a problem. What it does mean, though, is there's at sessions.ministar.org, I think, there is a place where you can log in and vote for sessions. And I put my username and password in there. But it could be, especially when you're using the guest Wi-Fi here at the conference, that anybody else in the room or on the Wi-Fi network could actually see what your username and password is, because it is not encrypted between your device and the server. It's basically sent over the internet in clear text. So that's not ideal. If you do have a website where anyone's really logging in or transmitting any sort of sensitive information, I do recommend you get an SSL certificate and set up SSL on the server. SSL certificates basically just say that there's a third party that says this is the website you're trying to get to, and it's not some sort of spamming website or phishing website that's trying to steal your information. There's some information here at the cipher list, cipherli.st, where it talks about how to configure Apache and Nginx web servers, I think maybe IIS as well, with the latest encryption standards. And then this website also that I showed a screenshot here is SSL Labs. And SSL Labs gives you a very detailed report of all the encryption systems you're using and all the certificate details, and gives you a grade on if you're doing well or not. And the nice thing as well is both of these websites do have links to resources where if it's not exactly that you can find how to upgrade the server or tweak some settings for your hosting environment. Or just talk to the hosting company and say, hey, this looks like a problem. And they may be able to resolve it as well. So again, if you're doing a website, it usually costs a little extra, but I do recommend that these days that you get an SSL certificate, because then everything is encrypted. I'll talk a little bit about search engine optimization, or SEO, making sure that Google and other search engines do find your new site just as well as their old site. And the first thing about that is whenever an HTTP request goes across the internet, so you say, hey, I want ministar.org, it comes back with a response. The response code is usually 200 saying, hey, yes, I have this web page, and here it is. Another response code that's available, well, one you'll see pretty often is 404, which just says, you'll see that sometimes on a page where it says, page not found. I don't know what that page is. Nobody's ever asked that before, or somebody's asked for it before, but we don't actually have a page there. So this one, HTTP 301, is another very common response that says, I know what page you're talking about, but it's not here. It's over at this other spot. So yeah, like for example, we'll look at a couple different examples actually. The reason you use the 301 redirect or 301 response is to basically tell search engines, this thing has permanently moved from one place to another place. And search engines respect that and say, hey, I had a bunch of information about this old page, and now it's moved over to this page, so I will also move over kind of, the reputation and the keywords and that type of thing if people were linking to the old page. So a number of ways that you can use redirects In some cases, your old About Us page on your website would be something like about.asp or /info/about. But now on the new website, it's actually at /about-us, about-us. And so basically what you want to happen is whenever a search engine or a visitor goes to this about.asp, that it would actually give a 301 response that says, actually, that page isn't here anymore, but it's over here. And then your browser actually will just immediately go, oh, it's over here, and it doesn't even tell you, like, hey, I'm actually going to a new spot. It just automatically redirects you there. If you're using some sort of a content management system, there's usually a system for basically a administration interface or some add-on you can add in that says, hey, I want to create redirects from here to there. Otherwise, you could actually put that configuration information into the server configuration itself if you cannot do it via some sort of an admin interface on the website. And one thing I like to mention is some people get a little overzealous on redirecting things. If there's a page of information, I know at one point our website had something about doing like virtual 3D tours of a business or house or something like that. We're like, we don't do that anymore. So actually that's fine to say, hey, this page doesn't exist anymore. Don't redirect it back to your blog page or your home page or something like that, because it's not really a thing anymore. So some people just like to say, oh, this once was a blog post, so if somebody tries to go there, they're probably wanting to go to the blog page. But they could probably find the blog page pretty simple anyway. But it's not going to be the information that they thought was there anyway. So the other types of redirect that are very important as well is redirecting full domains. In this example, ministar.org also, I checked, has minibar and minidemo.org. And whenever you go to one of those, and it's set up really nicely, because all it actually does is just immediately your browser and search engines are redirected to just ministar.org. The nice thing about that is that it makes sure that if you don't have it set up that way, search engines and people would maybe go to minibar.org and say, oh, look, here's a website. And it looks very similar to ministar.org, but maybe it's different. I'm not really sure. And so this is an easy way to say, these are both the same website, and whenever you go to this one that's not really a different website, we're going to redirect you all over to the same place. But it's nice because then somebody can type in minibar.org and we'll get to the right place, but they don't see, they can't really say, oh, is there two different versions of this website? I'm not sure. So yeah, it makes sure the search engines are less confused. Sometimes search engines could say, oh, hey, I've got minibar.org and ministar.org, and which one is the more important website? And so you could kind of split your ranking of search engines by one has ranking for these pages and one has ranking for these pages. Just make sure they're all redirected to the same space, and then you won't have that problem. So yeah. And then, also it keeps links consistent, so you don't have links to all these different domains. So now we're going to do the final launch preparations, because we have kind of all this stuff set up and ready to go. Thought I'd throw in some fun movie images or something in there, but let's see. Okay, so what I usually do when I'm launching a website first is actually get the website up and running on that hosting system, but then in your computer you have a host file which actually overrides any sort of DNS systems. So you can basically hard code when I go to ministar.org actually use this IP address. So what I can do is before I launch the website, get all the files in the database and things running on the server. And then trick my computer via the host file to basically think the website is over here on this new hosting platform. And then I can actually look at the website before I launch it and say, does it look like it's working right? And if it's not, then we have to fix some things. The nice thing as well, sometimes your hosting provider will also provide like a separate URL that will basically work as a test environment. It's basically the same files and everything, but it actually is at test.hostingcompany.com or something like that. And so the nice thing is that I like there too is you can both look at the old site and the new site, and see like are we missing things? Are things working correctly? And then this is a very important point, is that back when I talked about DNS, it gives you a time to live, or that number of seconds that this DNS record is valid. And when you change that, it doesn't really, that change you made doesn't really take effect on the rest of the internet until all that cache time is expired. So, for example, I think like sometimes it could be like an hour. Say when the DNS name server says this is valid for an hour, then that information could be cached in DNS servers all across the internet for the next hour. And that's great when you're not changing where the website is. But when you are changing where the website is, after you make that change, for the next hour, you could be getting the old website or the new website, and you don't really know which one's working. So you basically have two websites that are working at the same time. And I would say that's not ideal. You don't know, like if you have a contact form on both pages or on both websites, you could be getting you could be getting contact information submitted on both of them. And that, if one of them's hooked up to some sort of inventory system or email system and the other one's not, then you're not really sure what you're getting. So what I'd recommend very highly is that before you launch the website, change that TTL, the time that the DNS record is valid, to something very low, usually around 5 or 10 minutes. 600 seconds is about 10 minutes, And that's nice because instead of having an hour or two or a day or so where you're seeing both websites, you have a small amount of time, 5, 10, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes or an hour, where the potential of both websites being accessed at the same time is happening, but hopefully it's not the end of the world. You could also, in some services or website services, they'll let you just shut down the website. And so for a little while, someone may be seeing a website that says, hey, we're updating things, come back in a little bit. And the idea really is just you don't want to have a lot of interruption. And so basically set that information as low as you can. The other part of that is when you change that, you have to wait that full amount of the time before. So if it was an hour before and you change it to say, now these records are only valid for 10 minutes, you have to wait a whole hour before that information will get propagated to the rest of the DNS servers on the internet. And so, so if it's an hour or a day or two before, just make sure that you change those DNS records, or change the time to live, the TTL, to be a low amount. And then we can finally make the switch of the DNS records to point to your new hosting company. And again, for that 10 minutes or so that you made this change, people could be seeing the old website or the new website. But after that time has expired, then everyone on the internet should be seeing your new website. And then we're pretty much done. A couple last things is after the website is launched, I like to do just a little bit more testing to make sure that nothing was missed. Usually I wouldn't say it's a problem, but sometimes I might want to look at this DNS propagation website. Basically has like test DNS servers that it knows about all over the internet and says, what do they have a DNS record for? So you can verify if you want that those DNS records are showing up correctly. it's kind of fun every once in a while. You're like, for some reason, this DNS server in Pakistan doesn't have my DNS record. It just times out. And you're like, well, okay, that's maybe not the end of the world, at least for my website. But it depends on where you're doing business. I'm not sure. It's just a random. Sometimes it's Russia. I don't know. But then, yeah, you can also, again, go back to the SSLLabs.com and make sure the SSL certificate is set up correctly there. And then I do, some verifying that, the website still looks like it's working, and that every once in a while we've had issues where even while we're doing testing and stuff, they were actually including images from the old website on the old domain on the new website. And then as soon as you turn off the old one, then it starts, just giving you missing images and missing resources. So try to make sure that that doesn't happen as well. And sometimes that's stuff you can't really see until after you launch the website. So, but I think that's pretty much it. We basically hypothetically moved a website to a new place if we follow all that. And let's see. I think that's all the information that I have, and I hope anybody has some good questions. Yes?
Hi, just wanted to say I'm James. I work with Let's Encrypt.
Oh, yes.
We're a nonprofit SSL certificate authority. We issue SSL certs for free. Come find me.
That's really nice, yeah.
Brief questions, in-depth questions. Love to talk to you.
Haven't used that on one of my sites yet, but I should. So, gotta read up some documentation on how to set it up on my server and things. So, yes. Sometimes otherwise certificates are a little expensive, and so it's nice to have that as an option, especially for just smaller personal sites. Anybody else?
How
Yeah.
applicable is so some of this stuff, if you're standing up like a Shopify site or something like that, do they handle a lot of that for you on the back end?
Yes. Services such as Shopify, yeah, I would say, because basically you're not really, what we do as a company usually is we build a website and then we say, here's all the files or something, and we can help you move it onto a host or that type of thing. But I think Shopify is one of those services where they have all of the, it basically is a website and management system all in one. They do generally have, I would say they generally have these things set up pretty well. And I guess, where a lot of this could come in is if you're moving from some other sort of system to Shopify or things, you want to make sure about the redirect links and, making sure that it's a smooth, quick transition by making sure that the DNS changes happen, over a good amount of time or quickly. Yeah. So, does that make sense? All right. Well, I think that's all I have.
Yeah. So
Oh, sorry. Yes.
So if you are done with coding and everything, and if my website is ready, so can I actually host this from my laptop?
You could. You could. The problem that you're going to have is really, the problems that you're going to have is generally your internet service provider, Comcast or CenturyLink or something like that, generally doesn't like you hosting from their from your server or from your laptop. Sorry, just because. A couple things. They don't really guarantee that you'll have that IP address for the rest of time. They can at any time just maybe disconnect you and reconnect you with a new IP address, and then people are not going to be able to find your laptop. There are ways to get around that too. The other thing that can happen though is, it's your laptop. So if you put your laptop in your bag and turn it off, or it gets disconnected from the internet, then your website's not up anymore. That's why most people, I would say, try to go with some sort of a server environment where they actually have, a number of servers and a number of power systems and network systems that are more redundant to make sure that your website doesn't go down, I guess. But it's possible. Yes?
We just switched hosting companies for our website, our company, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the training on that was 301 redirects and having that page very customized.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any instance where you're going to have that content on the new website where you would customize the 301 redirect instead of just having it automatically redirect on the back end how you would walk it through?
I'm not exactly sure. Customize.
Yeah, so you have your 301 redirect page that
Yeah.
say you meant to Is there any instance where you would want to have that if really that new content is related to their previous search? Or would you just always want to have it automatically redirect on the back end?
I mean, you can. There are ways within HTML to, actually put them on a page that says, "Oh, this information is over here," and then it would actually either say, just the web page would just say, "Click here to go there," or even the browser would redirect you after 10 seconds or something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an option. I would say most likely visitors don't really care to know that, hey, update your bookmarks or something. But in this case, with the 301 redirect, it basically just sends you there no matter what. So I guess, yeah, I would recommend just to make it kind of an automatic redirect like this and just make sure it's kind of there for a number of years or something like that, because, or maybe forever, but some people don't like forever because it just, it just means that you have to, take care of this thing forever. So, but if it's even for a month or two, all the search engines and most visitors are going to know that, like, oh, this is where I have to go, and probably are not likely after that to keep looking for it. But I'd say, as long as you can keep the redirect going, might as well. So, all right. Well, I think we're getting pretty low on time, maybe, or not. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to come up. Thanks for being a great audience.